when you've experienced prolonged rejection, your nervous system starts preparing for abandonment before it even arrives, right? You become hyper independent, hyper alert, hyper protective. You learn not to need anymore. You learn to not even ask for help anymore. And not to say that is healthy, because it feels safer. And here's the danger. Sometimes the very armor that kept you alive becomes the thing that keeps love out, that keeps love away, that keeps support away, right? Aggression begins biting, even the hands trying to help. And it's not because you're cruel. It's because your body no longer remembers what acceptance feels like. And I hate to think that someone understands this. Living Content Era 2 is for the person who's already on the journey and is ready to go even deeper. It's for the deeply reflective human who knows that the gap between external success and internal alignment is real and is no longer willing to paper over it. It's for the woman who holds a lot in her home, in her career, in her community, and is starting to ask harder questions about who is she beneath everything she carries. It's for anyone who is excellent in every room and quietly unsettled on the drive home. It's for anyone who has done enough living to know that who you are on the inside shapes everything that happens on the outside, and who wants to talk about it honestly, without performance and without pretending. Hello sis and the brother in the room. Hello family. Welcome back to Living Content Podcast. I'm so grateful that you are back here again. I mean, if you're new, welcome. As we always say, welcome to Living Content Podcast. If you're coming back, sis and the brother in the room, I really appreciate you, honestly. Today's conversation is one that I couldn't wait any longer to bring to the podcast, to be quite honest, and you'll get to know why as I continue to share, right? It is on rejection. I often hate to speak about rejection from a point of self-victimization because it can easily create an exaggerated sense of unwantedness, of being unwanted by the world and people around you. And I mean exaggerated. It does not necessarily mean that sometimes we do not feel those feelings, but it can create this aloneness in a world where we are still surrounded by a community that cares and that loves us. It can create the me against the world type of view that blurs out the community that still surrounds us, which sometimes can be unfair to think that we are completely rejected and we are unwanted in this world. So I'm very careful when I speak about rejection. Rejection is one of those experiences that we rarely speak about honestly, to be quite honest. We celebrate the promotions, the marriage, the opportunity, the breakthrough, but very few of us sit down and say, this rejection changed me, fundamentally changed me. It changed just how I view life, just how I do life. And I don't mean talking about how much it hurt me. That happens, but how it built me. Rarely do we speak about how rejection built you. And because most of us don't want to be using positivity, right? Language most of the time. And you're quite right. It's very hard to use positivity language when you're going through the hardest time of your life. And I'll share about this as well. My own journey. It's extremely hard. It's different though to speak about it in hindsight. So today's episode, it's called Your Strength is Forged in Rejection. And I hope that you allow me your time to speak more about this, because it can easily sound like, oh, here again, we're going to hear about how rejection is a good thing. This is not the episode, but I want to share more about why I do say your strength is forged in rejection. There are seasons of life that feel difficult, and many of us experience those. I think challenges and obstacles in life are bound to happen. They are part of the experience. So it's not really about if you will experience challenges. Challenges are not necessarily a probability, but it's something that you are bound to experience in this life. All of us are bound to experience challenges in some shape or form. No one is really ever exempt from experiencing challenges. So when I speak about rejection, it is something that is lived by many of us, right? There are seasons of life that feel difficult, and then there are seasons that feel endless. And I mean endless. They stretch for a very long time that you even start to feel like they'll never end. And I mean the kind where every morning begins with hope and every evening ends with another closed door. Another email that never came, another opportunity that chose someone else, another prayer that remained unanswered. You stop asking, when will this change? And something start asking a different question altogether. Is this simply who my life is going to be? Because it has stretched so long that it's starting to feel like this is what your life is going to be forever. I say this because I know that place. Because the past 2 years have been some of the hardest years of my adult life. It wasn't because one thing went wrong, but it was because uncertainty became my daily companion. When I mean uncertainty became my daily companion, sis, I found myself on some days just begging to say, tell me that this ends well. I don't think I've fully found the language for what those years felt like. It was a season of constantly negotiating with uncertainty, waiting and wondering, trying to find even the smallest clue that all of this would eventually become a beautiful story. All of this ought to have some deeper meaning. I kept asking life that, can you at least tell me that this ends well? And then there was silence. There's nothing. Every day required faith I no longer felt. Every week required hope I could barely find. There came a point where optimism experienced a drought. It was flat dry. I didn't even have an ounce of optimism in me. Hope didn't disappear overnight. It slowly wilted until I realized I wasn't dreaming anymore. I was surviving. And maybe someone listening understands exactly what I mean. You still show up. You still smile. You still go to work. You still pay the bills. But inside, your imagination has stopped believing in better. It has stopped believing that at some point there's an end to this. People often ask, how did you stay strong? The truth, I didn't know that I felt strong. I just knew I couldn't stop, because stopping would have swallowed me. And I knew that it would have taken a lot to pull me out of that. There wasn't some dramatic moment where courage arrived. There was simply the understanding that if I stopped moving, I'd drown, and I'd deeply drown. So I kept going, not because I was fearless. I'm not that person who's just fearless, but because I had no other choice. It was very clear that there was no other choice but to keep going. Sometimes resilience doesn't look inspiring, to be quite honest. It doesn't look inspiring as we think. It feels deeply different to how it may look like. When people see you as strong, as inspiring, that, oh my goodness, you're so resilient, the emotions that you go through internally, what you experience internally is totally different from what people see. Sometimes resilience looks like brushing your teeth in the morning, sending one application, answering one more email, making dinner, getting out of bed, that little activity that you do without thinking in the morning, just getting out of bed and opening your windows, praying with tears instead of confidence. Sometimes resilience is wonderfully ordinary, very, very ordinary. So over time, something strange happened. And as I say, over time, because it wasn't fast, it wasn't quick, and it wasn't dramatic, but it gradually happened. It slowly happened without me noticing, while rejection kept showing up at my front door every day, disguised in a different thing, or it felt like disguised in a different thing. Something stronger was quickly forming underneath. Resilience, endurance, evidence. The evidence that I was talking about in the other podcast. It was happening even without me realizing that I was building evidence for my mind, for my body, for my spirit. I began collecting proof Not proof that life was fair. Proof that I could survive the unfairness. That is a very different thing. Every difficult day became evidence. Every disappointment became evidence. Every unanswered prayer became evidence. Until one day I realized I have survived everything that almost broke me. That sentence changed me. Because confidence is really born from success. Real confidence comes from surviving what you thought could destroy you. What you thought would destroy you. That is different. You stop believing you are capable because people told you. You stop searching for that validation from people. You believe it because your own life has become the evidence. And that's totally different. The evidence gained from your own lived experience versus the one that you were told is fundamentally different. A lived experience, you know for sure what the outcome of that thing is. Versus the one that you're told that in your head you're still thinking, what if it will look different? Like many of you, rejection isn't unfamiliar. If I'm honest, I've known it for most of my life, as I said in the beginning. I've often had to build my own table instead of waiting to be invited to someone else's. And sometimes that looked like creating opportunities. Sometimes that looked like writing my own book. Sometimes that looked like the very, very thing that you're listening to, this podcast. I found my own tribe, my own people through this podcast that I didn't believe were there. And that for me was evidence to say, if you build your own table, your own people will come. So starting my own podcast was also building my own table, choosing myself before someone else finally did. But there was something different about this last season. This rejection stayed long enough that I began calling myself something I'd never called myself before. A feral dog. A feral dog. I said this one time at the office. But before I even get there, the first time I said it at home, and my husband said, don't do that. Don't ever call yourself that when you have family that loves you. And I said, hear me. There's a reason why at some point I started seeing myself as a feral dog. I know that sounds harsh, but that's exactly how it felt. A creature that has spent so long surviving that it no longer knew what safety felt like. When you've experienced prolonged rejection, your nervous system starts preparing for abandonment before it even arrives, right? You become hyper independent, hyper alert, hyper protective. You learn not to need anymore. You learn to not even ask for help anymore. And not to say that is healthy, because it feels safer. And here's the danger. Sometimes the very armor that kept you alive becomes the thing that keeps love out, that keeps love away, that keeps support away, right? Aggression begins biting, even the hands trying to help. And it's not because you're cruel. It's because your body no longer remembers what acceptance feels like. And I hate to think that someone understands this. One of the hardest parts of that season was God. It wasn't because I stopped believing. It was because the way the season felt so prolonged, it started to feel like he felt quiet, too quiet, if I may say. That despite how I prayed to be lifted out of that season, because I was not seeing anything, I felt like he didn't care. Or he wasn't there, rather. Maybe you've prayed prayers that felt like they hit the ceiling. Maybe you've wondered where he was. I did too. But hindsight has a beautiful way of revealing what pain cannot see in the midst of the thing that you're going through. And I might have started at the end when I opened this new era of living content. I might have started at the end. Hence, I'm very much mindful of bringing this episode here as episode 6. As I said, looking back now, I can trace his fingerprints everywhere in that season. He wasn't absent. He was preparing. Because the season I eventually walked into required someone different from the woman who entered the wilderness. The opportunities that came later needed a version of me that knew her worth before receiving applause, before being told about it. That wasn't desperate for belonging, that wasn't collapsing under rejection, that could carry responsibility without making it her identity. The old version of me couldn't have sustained the season. God wasn't delaying me. He was developing me and developing the foundational characteristics that needed to form to hold better the season and to walk better in the season. And I might not know what more the season is going to unveil to me, that I may have to grow through it. But I know for sure the season that I just came from is a season that was intentionally seeded in my path to prepare me for this one that I have just walked into. My son has just woken up. But here's what I want to leave with you today. Your strength is forged in rejection. Whenever you experience rejection, know that your strength is forged in rejection. I know we don't want to speak about strong. We don't want to speak about strength because we no longer want to be strong. We don't want strength anymore. We want to be weak. We want to be soft. But there's a thing about this life that requires strength for you to keep going. Whenever you go through rejection, remember my words. Your strength is forged in rejection. And it's not to say that rejection is good. Let's never romanticize suffering. Rejection deeply hurts. It wounds, it cuts, it isolates, as I mentioned. It makes you question yourself. It makes acceptance a very unfamiliar thing. But if you refuse to let it define you, it begins refining you as opposed to defining you. Fire doesn't ask permission before it transforms steel, right? Neither does life. The version of you that walks out of rejection often possesses a wisdom, a discernment, a courage, a self-respect that comfort could never, ever have produced. Some doors don't open because you are being punished. Some doors don't open because you are being punished. I say that to repeat that because it happens, right? Some doors stay closed because your life is quietly being strengthened. Not every rejection is redirection. Sometimes it is formation. Sometimes the gift hidden inside rejection is you. The you who no longer bargains for belonging. The you who stops shrinking to fit rooms. The you who trusts yourself very deeply. The you who knows I can survive difficult things. That version of you is worth meeting. And sometimes, unfortunately, they do show up at the other end of rejection. So as usual, I leave you with journaling prompts. Number 1, think about how rejection has shaped the way you currently see yourself. What rejection has shaped the way I currently see myself? Number 2, and then think about where have I mistaken someone's inability to recognize my value for a lack of value within me? Because those are two different things. Number 3, what strengths have quietly emerged from seasons I once wished away? Number 4, in what ways have I become overly self-protective? And what would it look like to feel safe without abandoning my boundaries? And lastly, if this season is preparing me rather than punishing me, what might it be teaching me about who I am becoming? Okay. And for this week's affirmation, think about it as though I am holding your hand right now. Because I am that big sis. And taking in a deep breath. Whatever you're doing right now, just grounding yourself within your body and taking in a deep breath. I want you to deeply believe this. As you say these words, believe them too. I am not defined by rejection. My worth remains untouched by closed doors. Every season has strengthened my character, deepened my wisdom, and expanded my capacity to endure. I trust that what is for me will arrive in its right time, and I no longer measure my value by acceptance. I honor the person I've become, and I walk forward with courage, knowing that my strength has been forged not despite rejection, but through it. And that's it. So family, in closing, if you are in a season where every answer feels like a no, I know how heavy that becomes. But please don't confuse rejection with your value. Please don't ever confuse rejection with your value. I know after hearing it, after receiving it for so long, you stop that maybe your value is diminished. Maybe you are not who you think you are. Maybe you're something else. I hope that you never trade off who God says you are and the value He has placed upon you for something less than, because rejection has convinced you that you are less than what God says you are. People can reject your timing, your ideas, your work, your application, your presence, and still never touch your worth. Your worth was never theirs to begin with, and it isn't theirs to take away. One day you look back and realize what felt like abandonment was actually construction work happening. Okay. The strength you're praying for is already being formed, even here, especially here, sis. I close here today, and I do hope that you have a lovely week ahead. Do take care of yourself. We'll talk again next week. Cheers then. Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode. I really do appreciate you for being here. Please remember to share your love openly here by subscribing, sharing these episodes, and also just adding your feedback on the reviews. So this podcast can also be easily found by those in similar journeys and needing the message here. I would love to hear how the podcast is helping you. So do share that too with me, and be sure to check the podcast out on Instagram. Keep well. Chat to you soon.